Alright, so in the last video we've seen how we can create functions, how we can call our functions, how we can define parameters to our functions, how we can send data to our function as arguments. Now it's time to see how we can return some data from a function. But let's first read the code that we have here to make things more clear. And the code inside the function, the main function. Alright, now let's define another function. I'm gonna type the fun keyword, space, and it's gonna be called getMax. And this function is gonna return the maximum of two integers. So I'm gonna define here a parameter. I'm gonna call it a. In a real app, you should use more descriptive names. It's gonna be of type int, and the next one is gonna be called b, and it's gonna be also of type int. I'm gonna put the curly braces and I'm gonna press enter. Now, to get the maximum value between these two numbers, we type here val max, and here we type an if expression. So we type if a greater than b, then we're gonna assign a to our max variable, else we're gonna assign b, and in the case that the two numbers are equal, b is gonna be assigned to our max variable. Now, in order to return this value to our function, we need first to say to the function what kind of data is gonna return. And to do that, we go here at the enclosing parentheses, and if you don't have spaces here, or you wondering about how to have the proper formatting, you just press Ctrl Alt L and the code is going to be formatted. Alright, and here we put a colon, and here we define what type of data this function is going to return, and in this case it's going to be an integer, so we put int here. And this is similar to the way we declare a type for a variable. Now, if you go down here, now you see that it says a return expression is required in a function to block body. So now we need to return this. Now you need to return some data that we define here. In this case, we need to return an integer. And to return the maximum value to our function, we type here return, the keyword return, and our value, which is our variable max, and press enter. Now, if you call this function in our main function, getMax, and now let's also press Ctrl Alt L to format the code. And here let's say that we type two arguments for our parameters. Let's say that we put 5 and 9. Now, if you run this code, now you're gonna see in the output nothing, because in order to get this value, we need to retain this value, to capture this value in a variable. And to do that, we define a variable in front of our getMax function. It's also be a val. I'm gonna call it max, and we're gonna assign the getMax function to our variable, and that is gonna return our maximum number. Now, you may see here that you have two names. You have the same name here and the same name, and that is not a problem, because this variable max that we have inside the getMax function exists only inside the getMax function. It's scoped only here. This is why you can use the same name here. So if I try to type here also max to declare the variable which is going to be called max, I can't, because it says completed declaration, because the compiler doesn't know if you assign a value, let's say, to this, it will not know what variable to call, because you have the same name. But up here is not a problem, because this is in the block of the main function, so it exists only here, and this exists only here. Now, we have called our getMax function, and this function is going to return the maximum of these two values, which is 9. Now we need to print this value in our console, and to print this value, you just type here println, and we're referring our max variable. Now if you run this code, you're gonna get 9 because our getMax function is called. The two arguments are passed to our function. Then the code inside our getMax function, it's executed. It compares these two numbers, and if a is greater than b, then it assigns a to our max variable, or it's gonna, if that is not true, it's gonna assign the value of b, and then it returns that max value to the function which is called. So this function returns that value here, and here we capture that value which is returned from the getMax function in our max variable, and then we print that max variable with our println function or statement, and then we see the output in our console 9, right? Another important thing to know is that after we type the return call or the return keyword, the function is left. The function is stopped there. So if we add other text here, let's say we add here a println, and we type here some text, you see that this is highlighted and it says that this is a reachable code, because after we typed our return max, our function is stopped, is left, and it's not executing any code below of that return call or of that return keyword, right? Another important thing that you can do with return keyword is that you can return from a function without returning any kind of value, and in that case it will have the same effect, and that means that it will leave the function right there even though we don't return any kind of value. So I can type here return, but let's delete here the type, because now it's expecting a value to be returned, and now this will have the same effect. It will leave the function right there, and it will not execute any line of code below of our return keyword. So if I type here a println statement, and I put some text here, as you can see, this has the same effect. If you type the return keyword in your function, it will stop the execution of the function, and every line of code below of the return keyword is not going to be executed. So it's very good to know this also. Another important thing to know is that we can only return a single value with the return keyword. So we cannot return here two integers, let's say. And also we cannot have two returns in the same function. Let's say if I put here also return max, I can't, because this is also a reachable code. But I can have two returns calls if they are reaching different branches. So if I change this if expression to an if statement, so if I type something like this, if let's say a greater than b, let's add the curly braces now, we type here return a, else return b. So now we have two returns, but they are never reached together. They are always reached separately. So this is why I can use here two returns, because as I said, they are reached always separately. So if you run this code, you're gonna see the same output. So you see 9. So this is another way to write the same thing that we had previously. But it's recommended to use what we had previously, because with specifically it's better to have an if expression. Another way to write the same thing but in a more concise way, and let's undo the code that we have that we had previously. So let's press Ctrl Z. So now I have the code that we had previously. Now if you hover over this max, it says variable used only in formatting return can be inline. So if you click here inline variable, now this thing does the same thing that it was doing previously, but this is a shorter way to write the same thing. So now it returns A if this condition is true. Otherwise, the else part is called and it returns B. So we have the same thing, but written in a shorter way. Alright, another way to write the same thing that we have here is by using what is called the single expression function. And to do that, we can remove the curly braces. We can put our code up here. We can remove the first curly brace, and we can also remove the return keyword. And here we put equals. And this now does the same thing that the previous code was doing, but this is a more concise way. And it's recommended to use this only if you know that you have in your function a single expression, or in other words, if you know that you have a single line of code. And you can also remove the type here, because the type can be inferred. And again, only use this if you know that you have in your function a single line of code, and in that case you can skip the return keyword. But if you have multiple lines of code, you should always use the curly braces and the return call or the return keyword. Alright, so this is our discussion about how we can return a value from a function.